From inside the Banner offices along the Inner Harbor, it is the Banner Baseball Show. John, did you hear that voice crack?
It is. I did. Well, you've been doing some like heavy podcasting.
Yeah.
Lately. You this is 3 in 3 days for you.
This is a lot. Burning the candle at both ends.
This is the life you chose.
This is the life I chose. This between Ravens podcasting and Orioles podcasting. But we're here. We are bright and early on this Tuesday morning to talk about the Baltimore Orioles. We were going to discuss some of the young guys on this roster, what we've seen from them so far in 2025, and maybe some reinforcements who could be on the way very soon. But first, let's get a quick word from our sponsor.
For the 5th year in a row, Toyota is the best resale value brand according to Kelley Blue Book's KBB.com, including the 2025 Grand Highlander, best in resale value for midsize SUVs. Toyota, let's go play.
All right, John, let's talk about this current team that we have in front of us right now. This 13-20 Baltimore Orioles team that was just roughed up for 7 homers in the series finale against the Kansas City Royals. Feels like we're still at that stage right now where things are disjointed. The offense has a great day. Pitching can't hold up. Pitching is great. Defense isn't there to back them up. None of the 3 phases seem to be clicking at the same time. And that's why this team is 7 games under 500 as we stand and as they head out on the road trip to Minnesota.
It's true. I viewed this homestand as like treading water because they're no worse than when they arrived here. The losses feel worse than the wins. I think that's kind of a characteristic of this team for the duration of the season so far, that like you can have a great win one night and then you can get, you can be used as like a human mop and just rubbed all over the floor in a bunch of slop for 9 innings. And that feels worse than winning a nice game where Felix Bautista gets a save and yada, yada, yada. And that's just kind of where they're at. But this is a very like sliding scale and a low bar and any other kind of like thing you want to call it. But the starting pitching gave them a chance to win 5 of those 6 games. And they went 3-2 in those games. And that is how this is going to have to go. Do you want to have your pitcher give up 4 runs? No. Is 4 runs fewer than 8 runs? Like, yes, I think so.
Yeah. The bar for starting pitching on this team has been lowered so much. We see a start like Cade Povich had over the weekend where he gives up 3 earned, I think, in 4 2/3. And we think that this is a great start. So our perception of the starting pitching on this team, it just really makes you appreciate in hindsight just how good Corbin Burnes was for this team. As difficult as his August was, I remember seeing on social media some people being so frustrated with him last August and saying, one comment especially stuck out to me, saying, I'll help you pack your bags.
Yeah.
What this team would do for somebody even close to the caliber of Corbin Burnes at this point is absurd. This team is hurting for starting pitching right now, and the answers could be coming at some point eventually in the form of Zach Eflin, who was down rehabbing in Aberdeen recently and looked very good. Could be coming eventually further down the road in the form of Grayson Rodriguez. At least that's what Mike Elias and Brandon Hyde hope. Could be coming way down in the second half of the season with Kyle Bradish potentially and Tyler Wells. But in the meantime, you're going to just have to live with your lumps and you're going to have to outscore quite a lot of teams.
Yeah, it's and that's part of the thing that made it feel okay, was that they were okay offensively. I mean, you are getting Gunnar Henderson back. Jackson Holiday is way better than he was 2 weeks ago. Ryan O'Hearn is getting there, and you're saying, okay, like if this team is, you're getting closer to the point of this team being visible, being reachable. And it's really just a matter of, like you said, putting it all together. But I think that of all the ways to lose, I think there's like, and I'm going to say the same sentence twice and it's going to be about inflection, but like, oh, that was dumb. Like Kyle Gibson giving up 4 home runs the first inning is dumb. And then like, oh, that was dumb. Like a series finale where you like use your bullpen very aggressively to try to keep a game close because you're hitting and you're not worried about what they're going to do. And then you give up 7 home runs. You're like, that's just dumb. Like, or I should have inflected upwards. Like that's like a silly kind of dumb.
Right.
In those games you're going to lose. You're going to lose those because baseball is inherently dumb. And like the kind of games you don't want are the dumb kind where you don't have a chance.
Right. And we were talking just off air about the bullpen decisions made by Brandon Hyde in that game. And there's been particular ire from corners of the internet about the decision to bring in Charlie Morton, who came in and gave up 2 earned runs in an inning and looked like the exact same Charlie Morton that was starting games earlier this season. I don't know how many more opportunities this team can give him out of the bullpen, but they have to give him opportunities. If he's going to be in the bullpen and they're playing in a game where they're using as many arms as humanly possible, at some point he's going to get an opportunity. And quite frankly, I mean, I don't know of too many better situations to throw him in. Maybe if it was a tie game, that would have been worse, but they're down 2 runs. It's late in the game. They've already used a bunch of their arms. Maybe they could have gone to Gregory Soto at that point. I just have a hard time faulting Brandon Hyde when he's probably been instructed by members of the front office, hey, Charlie Morton is in the bullpen now. You got to make him, you got to use him as much as you can to see if this is going to work as an experiment.
Yes. I think there were a couple of things that went into it. I mean, he was pretty aggressive early in saying, all right, we're going to use our good relievers in this game. And that's what they did. And it didn't exactly work out. So you're left with the options that you have. And I don't want to say it's like 9 times out of 10 or 8 times out of 10, but I feel comfortable saying like 3 out of 4 times, if you're wondering why so-and-so is pitching instead of so-and-so, it's just about like availability and like trying to not have guys like blow out. They have a bunch of relievers. I think Keegan Aiken and Brian Baker have pitched in like almost half of their games. Like that's a lot.
Yeah. And Brian Baker pitched in that game and gave up runs.
Yes.
He has been one of the Orioles' best relievers this year. Brandon Hyde went to him early to try to keep that game close. It was just going back and forth like a seesaw. And he got hit around. So everybody that Brandon Hyde used in that game got hit around. I don't think that that's the manager's fault when just the ball seems to be flying out of the yard. It seemed like that was just a juiced ball game.
Yes, that was just one of those games. And like those are ones you chalk up to. You don't really get to chalk up like, well, charges to you don't get to charge it to the game when you're 7 games under 500. Like you need to win every game and you can't have dumb stuff happen. I would also point out that if the Orioles need a starter on Wednesday, that was effectively like a bullpen for Charlie Morton. Not what anyone wants to hear, but like it seems like they're pushing Dean Kramer back. He did take 103-mile-an-hour line drive off his leg, and it seemed to have hurt as he was pitching that gem on Friday. So as
a 103-mile-an-hour line drive would do.
I don't have that in me.
Yeah.
I don't have that in me. You would be recording this from a hospital. We'd be from a hospital, but I would still be laid up. So he gets an extra day, and they'll figure it out. But I think that's part of it too.
Dean Kramer's had some batted ball luck, not just in terms of results, in terms of BABIP, but also getting hit by line drives in recent years.
Yeah.
Remember when his wrist got hit and it swole up like a grapefruit, and it was just the ugliest looking thing I'd ever seen, and it miraculously didn't break any bones, but it looked horrific.
Yeah, it looked really bad. And you're talking about somebody who, for this is a Dean Kramer, this is a pro Dean Kramer chair on this podcast, that the one I'm sitting in. On
this side of the podcast,
yeah,
it is very pro Dean Kramer.
Yes, and
and
having said that, I can also say that like when you give up a ton of hard contact every once in a while, you're gonna get drilled with a line drive in them, and it's not funny. It's just kind of how it goes.
Yeah, that's true. All right, well, let's talk about some of the young guys that we've seen on this roster so far, because Coby Mayo has debuted in 2025. His season has gotten off to a rough start, and he is one of the young guys on this team that this team is relying very heavily on, probably more than they would like to at this point. I think we can throw Cade Povich in that category as well. But to me, John, I'm going to break down the prospect waves under Mike Elias pretty arbitrarily. You can draw the lines really wherever you want, but this is how I think of the Orioles prospect waves, at least since Mike Elias took over in 2019. There was the first wave. It was full of guys that Mike Elias did not acquire from 2019 to 2021. I throw Ryan Mountcastle, Austin Hayes, Dean Kramer, Ryan McKenna in there. You had some nice gems. Obviously, Mountcastle is still a starter. Dean Kramer is still a starter. Wave 2 was really where you built the core of this team.
Yes.
That was the group of guys that Mike Elias mostly acquired. Adley Rutschman, Kyle Bradish, Gunnar Henderson, Grayson Rodriguez, DL Hall, Joey Ortiz, Kyle Stowers. I know the two pitchers, Rodriguez and Hall, Elias did not acquire, but you really had a core group of really exciting young players there. That was the second wave of prospects. Now we're in this third wave of prospects that the Orioles are calling up. I'm going to throw Heston, Kjerstad, Jackson Holiday, Coby Mayo, Cade Povich, Chase McDermott into this category, and maybe eventually Samuel Basallo maybe eventually Enrique Bradfield Jr. This is kind of the postmodern group.
Yes.
If the second wave was where the Orioles built their current core of the team, this group has to supplement that group. And it's not as critical that these guys succeed as it was that the second wave succeed, because that group got them into a level of contention. But Mike Elias has consistently talked about building a pipeline. And you don't just shut off the pipeline as soon as you get good. You have to keep that pipeline flowing. And to me, because of some of the failures that the Orioles have had in terms of acquiring big league players, whether it be free agents or trades, that has placed extra pressure on these young guys to succeed. So I think of, missed trades like the Trevor Rogers trade so far, some of the free agents that they've signed this past offseason, Charlie Morton, Tyler O'Neill, haven't really worked out like they would want to. I know it's a month in, but the fact that the Orioles haven't had as many reinforcements as they would like coming from free agents and from trade acquisitions places a little bit more pressure on this third wave of prospects in Jackson Holliday, Heston Kjerstad, Coby Mayo, Cade Povich, etc.
Yes, I would say that if we're talking about why there's more pressure on this group, I think injuries is probably a larger piece of the pie than any of the other things. I mean, if when we were sitting here in, February, I don't think there was a world where we were going to say that Cade Povich was going to be in this rotation. There was already, we knew about Zach Eflin being at the top of it. Obviously, Grayson Rodriguez was not injured. Charlie Morton and Tomoyuki Sugano were signed to be, batting 500 on that one. Albert Suarez was in the mix, and you thought that he had a reasonable chance to keep his job and be that kind of guy. Dean Kramer still exists, who is probably in the rotation ahead of. There wasn't a world where Cade Povich was in this rotation, and would it have been annoying if Cade Povich went and had the spring that he had and ended up starting in Norfolk? Yeah. Would he have ended up here at some point pretty quickly? Absolutely. There's now a scenario where we've seen it a ton of times. By the time, I don't think Kyle Bradish ended up getting sent down per se, the way that other guys have. He ended up getting hurt and getting that reset on his rehab assignment. Dean Kramer was up and down after starting a season the way this has happened. Grayson Rodriguez was up and down after starting a season like this. I think that Cade Povich, if we're being honest, would probably be back in Norfolk figuring things out if there was that luxury. There is not that luxury. Coby Mayo, Mike Elias mentioned it a day before he had to call him up because of injury, that last year they didn't really get to kind of on-ramp him to the majors the way that they wanted to because of injuries. I can't remember specifically who he came up to replace and who was hurt, but I just remember everyone was hurt, and he just played a while. He played for a while, and then at some point somebody came back and they didn't keep him around. These are real differences in how these players are introduced, and there's other kinds. Heston Kjerstad's in this mix too, and we're going to talk about him probably in the context of other guys, but they're not. The expectations are high because of what they are expected to be coming from the minors, and I think that we saw a good bit, not totally with some of the other guys. I think Colton Cowser is probably the best example of hey, this is just going to take a little time. You have to give guys a chance to figure it out. And there's not been that chance, or it doesn't feel like there's that chance, because now that there's not that leash that some of these other guys had. Yeah. I think that's where some of these guys are feeling.
I didn't throw Colton Cowser or Jordan Westbrook into that, but I could throw them into wave 2.
Yeah, I mean, those are, I think everything that happened within a year of, I think it's when you get to be a regular type guy.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think they would definitely be wave 2 more so than wave 3 because of how quickly, when they were established. But there's guys who don't get that benefit. And there's also a world, I'm just going to bring up the world where Kyle Stowers, I think we're going to get there. If Kyle Stowers had hit 2 home runs the first week of the season in Boston last year, maybe he has Colton Cowser's season.
Yeah.
There was a spot to be gained. There, it ended up that Kyle Stowers and Heston Kjerstad were basically trading off the 5th outfield spot for a while until one of them got traded and one of them got hit in the head, and then neither of them were here. But there's a world where that opportunity comes to him if he has, it's not luck, it's talent, it's skill. But if that happens, we're talking about maybe how it's been 2 years and why hasn't Colton Cowser gotten the chance to break through. These things are all very, very fluid. They're frustrating to think about. And I would just say that there's not as much linear. I mean, this is the type of things that teams say, and it makes me feel stupid for saying it too. And, oh, development's not linear, blah, 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 blah. It's all true, but like, it's not a fun thing to say or talk about. Like these players, and this is something that and I'm kind of rambling, like when I like, as you put, like when I rank prospects for Baseball America, you're ranking like their peak, like 2 or 3 years. And like, if I put like an occasional all-star grade on someone and they make like all-star, they're an all-star 7 years later, I'm like, sweet, nailed that one.
You hit.
I did that. I was right. Like I'm talking about Austin Hayes, obviously. But that is the type of thing that isn't happening. Like sometimes it happens way for Jordan Westberg, and sometimes you can play at a level for a long time and not get that recognition. But I think when you're talking about waiting almost a full season of major league at bats for someone like Kyle Stowers to become what you thought he was, which is a guy who's just going to mash home runs and like get on base, like it takes a bit of time, and that time is not linear, especially where the Orioles are concerned now.
Right, and the Orioles, let's face it, they've been spoiled in terms of guys coming up and being good immediately, especially in that second wave. I mean, even in the first wave, Ryan Mountcastle came up and hit 333 in a shortened sample size in 2020, and then he went through a little bit of a sophomore slump to start 2021 and then figured it out and developed defensively at first base exceedingly well. I think a lot better than any of us expected. But obviously, the guys who came up and made an immediate impact, Adley Rutschman. I used Adley Rutschman as a demarcation line last week when talking about the Adley Rutschman era, because really you can look at the Orioles before Adley Rutschman, the Orioles since Adley Rutschman. And before Adley Rutschman, they were a losing team. And since Adley Rutschman made his debut, they have been a winning team. And Gunnar Henderson was added into the mix very late in that season when they were trying to make a playoff push. He was great immediately. And he went through a little bit of a sophomore slump. Adley Rutschman obviously struggled in his first 6 weeks in the big leagues. But by and large, these guys figured out their problems very quickly. And because they're superior prospects, they're former number one prospects in the game. So these guys have been excellent. And for fans who expect the same results from every single prospect or from guys who are down the top 100, it's fair to place those kind of expectations on these guys. And so any prospect is going to take his lumps. Any young player is going to take his lumps. It's just the Orioles are in a position right now where these struggles are being accentuated by the fact that they're losing games, by the fact that Coby Mayo is in the lineup and he is struggling, by Heston Kjerstad struggling at times in the lineup. Let's dive into Heston Kjerstad and kind of tie in the Kyle Stowers conversation here, because Kyle Stowers is doing phenomenally with the Miami Marlins right now.
Thrilled for him.
Acts awesome, by the way. I've interviewed Kyle Stowers over the years. If this side of the podcast is a Dean Kramer podcast, this side of the podcast is a Kyle Stowers podcast.
You got your Cali bro era going?
Oh, love it. I did ask him once if he ever surfed because of the hair, and he said no, but he gets that question a lot.
He would.
He would. Kyle Stowers has been an excellent interview and a very nice guy to talk to over the years. It's great that he's having huge success right now for the Miami Marlins. He's hitting over 300. He was, of course, part of that trade with Connor Norby to get Trevor Rogers from Miami. I'm not sure it's going to last. It's great that it's happening right now, but I think some fans are looking, wistfully at Kyle Stowers, what he's doing in Miami, and comparing him to Heston Kjerstad right now, who in 30 games so far this season, he's got negative .5 WAR. He's got 3 homers. He's hitting .205, and he's got an OPS under 600. I think we're going to see some evening out at some point. I think we're going to see Kyle Stowers come back down to earth. I think we're going to see Heston Kjerstad get closer to his ceiling than he is playing right now. Do you agree, John?
Yes, and I pulled this last night for the newsletter that I was writing. It was basically the morning almost. It was like in the 11, so I hope it reads well. But Heston Kjerstad.
Where can you get that newsletter?
At the BaltimoreBanner.com. I understand this outlet won a Pulitzer Prize.
It did win a Pulitzer Prize, and you can also subscribe $1 for 6 months.
Yes.
Sounds like great value.
For
better value.
Pulitzer Prize winning journalism and this podcast.
Sounds like better value than the Orioles got for Kyle Stowers and Connor Norby.
At this point, for sure. Heston Kjerstad right now has 233 plate appearances, which doesn't feel like a lot. I was listening to the game on the radio a couple weeks ago, and they mentioned he hadn't even gotten to 200 yet, and now he obviously has because he's playing every day and he's getting these chances. And I think it's worth noting that he is getting he's getting these opportunities. Would he be if Tyler O'Neill was healthy? Maybe. Would he be if Colton Cowser's healthy? Maybe. Like, this is the chance, though. There was a scout in Baltimore who was saying, sometimes you only get one chance. I wonder how this is going to go. It's going to go better for him. But 233 plate appearances. Kyle Stowers got to 234 in like last August, so like basically like almost a month after the trade, and his OPS at that point for his career was 555. That's almost 150 points lower than Heston Kjerstad's career OPS right now. He ended the season really poorly in Miami last year, but he has the experience. He has whatever needs to happen to get somebody to the point where they can produce in the big leagues. He got to that point, and
he's got the torpedo bat.
He's probably got a Does he actually?
He does.
Yeah. Awesome. Love that for him. And all of a sudden it's happening. This is something that when I say like these are guys, what guys ultimately often do what they want to do or what they're supposed to do. This is what I'm talking about. The Orioles probably had a choice in like who they were going to trade. There's a computer system named Omar that probably said that based on everything we knew about AAA production and raw traits and stuff like that, that Heston Kjerstad projected to be a more productive player for a longer period of time than Kyle Stowers. That projection system has been right about a lot of things over the course of years when it comes to identifying hitters. And I think there's probably a reason that Heston Kjerstad's here, and it's because this is going to happen at some point for him. I would also point out that there's the expected stats for Heston Kjerstad are way better than what they are in reality. And that's something that you can start saying at this time of year and not really like feel good about, because let's have the good stuff start happening. But you could have said the same thing about Gunnar Henderson like a week ago, and now he's actually hitting well. So,
right. And quite frankly, Heston Kjerstad needs to be a steady piece of this lineup going forward, not just in 2025, but in 2026 and beyond. Because when you look down the road at this outfield beyond this season, it's a little frightening, John. You think about the possibility of Cedric Mullins walking in free agency. Think about the possibility of Tyler O'Neill opting out and walking in free agency. You're talking about an outfield of Colton Cowser, Heston Kjerstad, and a large question mark there. So maybe they ultimately are able to fill that spot with some prospects that we'll talk about later, but that outfield production in the future is going to be something that we're going to be monitoring very closely.
Yes.
All right, let's talk about what we've seen from Cade Povich so far in his age 25 season. He's no longer considered a prospect. He has graduated, but he was formerly the Orioles' number 9 prospect, according to Baseball America, which I understand, John, you have a hand in. It's through 6 starts, a 5.16 ERA. His expected stats, you were just talking about Kjerstad's expected stats. Povich's expected stats are much worse than they were last year. And so even though he had an ERA over 5 last year, I think there were a lot of reasons for optimism when you looked at the underlying numbers coming into 2025. And also when you looked at how he closed the season. His September last year was very, very good. So far this season, it's not quite as good. He's throwing his four-seam fastball a whole lot, but it's really his four-seam fastball and his changeup that are his only pitches that are not generating negative run value, according to StatCast. When you look at the 6 starts that Povich has had so far this season, John, where do you think he is in terms of his development?
I think he is in a challenging moment. I think that's fair to say. I think it's one of those spots where, like I was saying earlier, he would not be out there kind of not floundering, but dealing with this if there was any way for that not to happen. He's kind of, and he's getting these reps after an offseason when he got bigger, got stronger. After an offseason when he had success from the majors in the big leagues to carry into the winter. So it's not like we're saying like, oh, none of this stuff could happen. I'm doing a bad job of finding what I was looking for, but I think that for him especially, I don't think we've talked about it, but that Athletic article about the umpires calling the strike zone a little tighter than they have in the past because of how they're evaluated. For context, they used to get 2 inches of buffer either way of like the rule book strike zone. And if they were within 2 inches, they wouldn't get dinged for it, which means that there were probably a lot of pitches that were a little outside the strike zone that were called strikes. Cade Povich works around the edges with a lot of his pitches. It is sometimes a feature and sometimes a bug. I'm not sure that he wants to be on those edges, but if you're not getting those strike calls, if you're not getting those outcomes the way you want to, you're throwing a lot more pitches. You're having to go back into the zone. Just based on, and I think this would probably indicate more than anything how that impacted him. So the shadow is what they call like the outside, those like edges of the strike zone. On Baseball Savant Statcast last year, that area he had like a +9 run value, like of getting strikes and getting swings. Now it's at -2. So like that's not an area where he could work the way that he did last year, and that is making it so that there's a lot more challenges for him he's around the zone more. He's not having those struggles, but he's not getting the outcome. So I think it's an adjustment period. I think it's probably like an aha moment as players have realized what was going on with the strike zone. I'm wondering, and I think it's pretty easy, Ty goes to the guy with options. Like they're going to need a starter soon for Zach Eflin. I would not be surprised if Cade Povich got one of those resets and went down to Norfolk to kind of just like take a breather, figure this out again. But they think highly of him. I don't think that they wanted it to be the case that he wasn't going to be in the rotation this year. I think that they had other options and that he was going to be the odd man out. And it's unfortunate that this has gone the way it has, but I think he's capable of, and I think we're right in saying that like it's not very good to, pitch into the 5th inning and give up 3 runs and not, that's not a quality start, but that is a start that you can win with. And I think he's got those in him, and that's really all this team needs. And he can do that if they let him.
Right. I think the frustrating part would be for fans, if Ty goes to the guy with options, he has had his fair share of struggles. Povich has obviously, yet to really establish himself. But you have other guys in this rotation, wink, wink, nudge, nudge, Charlie Morton, maybe if he's starting again later this week, that does not have options, is on a major league deal, being paid $15 million, but struggling way more than Cade Povich has.
Yes. And that's why he's in the bullpen right now.
Yeah.
I don't think the Orioles planned on him coming back. And I'm not saying that he is going to start tomorrow. I think they need to start. I think they're still TBA. I don't think they would have planned to say like, okay, we're going to give this another chance soon without it working out. But we were in, I think the Tigers DFA'd Kenta Maeda like right after the Orioles were there, but like they were also just like pitching him whenever they could in the bullpen, whenever they needed to. And then all of a sudden they realized, maybe not. I don't think the Orioles are at the maybe not stage yet, but they're at the point where like, you're here, you're going to pitch, and like, we're going to figure this out.
Yeah. Povich starts tonight at Minnesota in the first game of that series. So we'll see how that goes in his 7th start of the 2025 season. Coby Mayo. Let's talk about the 23-year-old, the Orioles number 2 prospect, according to Baseball America. On this podcast last week, I complained when Emmanuel Rivera got added to the roster, got called up when Jordan Westberg went down, and it wasn't Coby Mayo. And then lo and behold, Ramon Arias got hurt and Coby Mayo got called up anyway. So that point became pretty moot. Coby Mayo is 0 for his first 5. This is off the backs of last season where he came up to the big leagues and struggled as well. He's got great bat speed. We know about his exit velocities. He is struggling right now to make contact. He is struggling a lot with breaking balls. He's being peppered with breaking balls. He is expanding the zone a lot in terms of swinging and missing, and in terms of making weak contact, reaching for pitches. When you look at Coby Mayo right now, I know he has also drawn a lot of ire from fans. He really has not had a whole lot of opportunities, a whole lot of big league opportunities. And the Orioles still believe in this guy and believe in his ability to develop. But what are you seeing from him so far?
Yeah, I mean, in the one game, it felt a little samey to last year. I'm not gonna say that the results could have been any different.
The same stuff he struggled with last year. It's creeping up.
Yeah. I think he is someone who I want to see play for like a week and see how the things that he knew needed to change. We've talked about on this podcast before. Every stage of his career, he has gone to a level at the end of the season and felt challenged and had a few months to figure out what he needed to do, and then he's gone and done it. You are not going to face big league velocity in AAA, even in the early part of the season. You are not going to face pitchers who can locate their secondary pitches as consistently as they do in the big leagues. But Coby Mayo also is probably getting pitched around a ton at Norfolk. He's not backed up by Heston, Kjerstad, or Connor Norby or anyone else. There's a different caliber of player who are around him in the lineup, and pitchers on other teams want to get to the big leagues, and you can do that by not giving up home runs to Coby Mayo. So they're trying to do that. I think he needs that kind of runway. I don't think that runway is going to be available to him this time around, because it seems like we're not too far away from Jordan Westburg coming back. But I am personally starting to feel like of the camp, and there's no like for like replacements when you're talking about like give Coby Mayo, Jorge Mateos at bats. Like those are different at bats. Those are different profiles. If the Orioles are going to continue down this path of trying to match up against left-handed pitchers the way they have, there's no reason why Coby Mayo should not be involved in that. And I understand that's not what you have a 23-year-old top prospect do, but this team is not really in a position to make the long-term choice. And maybe they think they are. I think they might think they are, but I'm sitting here right now saying that you should let Coby Mayo be on this team for like a month and play against the lefties and see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, part of my frustration with them bringing up Emmanuel Rivera, and I saw people defend that move by saying Emmanuel Rivera is the better player right now. He is. He's older. He is more experienced. He is certainly more productive right now at the plate than Coby Mayo. But the whole point of giving a prospect opportunities is that he will eventually become better than the below replacement level player.
Yeah,
that is Emmanuel Rivera. And so you are investing in the future by giving him opportunities. Look at when Colton Cowser came up in the middle of the 2023 season, and he got about a month at the big league level and struggled and hit 115.
Yeah.
That paid huge dividends because he learned what he needed to do that offseason, made the adjustments, and came out in 2024 and was an Rookie of the Year finalist. So to me, I just, anytime I see Emmanuel Rivera in the lineup playing third base, playing first base, Coby Mayo not, it is going to frustrate me. And because I see the long-term benefit in giving those at-bats to Coby Mayo. But like you said earlier, John, the tie goes to the guy with options. And so when somebody comes back, Emmanuel Rivera is not going to be the guy that is sent down. It is most likely going to be Coby Mayo.
Yeah, and I'm interested as you're talking. I'm thinking about whether I wanted to say this or not, and I realize it might not be true. But if there was a third base need and that was the only thing that was going on with this roster. So, let's say Tyler O'Neill is healthy and performing. Let's say that even Ramon Urias is healthy and performing. Let's say that it's only Jordan Westburg. Colton Cowser is also a starting left fielder. This team is as they were built on opening day, and they need a right-handed hitting third baseman, and everything else is going perfect. Do you think that makes them more or less likely to have that person be Coby Mayo than Emmanuel Rivera when there's, if we're in this hypothetical world, the team is probably doing a little better than
right.
7 games under 500 or whatever it is. They're probably not dreadful against left-handed pitching. They're probably just say that like everything is going as expected to, and we thought it would in February. And unfortunately, Jordan Westburg's hamstring is bothering him, and he needs a couple weeks off. Do you think they would be more likely or less likely to have Coby Mayo be that person than Emmanuel Rivera in those circumstances?
I think maybe more likely to have Coby Mayo, just because that is what he brings, is a power right-handed bat. And we have yet to see it in the big leagues, but he has immense power. And I think the reason that they have Emmanuel Rivera on this team is because they like his defense a little bit better. They like his defense at first base and third base, and they feel like he can acclimate himself. And right now they are floundering. They are a team that needs production immediately. So I think that that's probably what goes into it more. Do you think they'd be any more inclined to give those at bats to Coby Mayo than Emmanuel Rivera in that magical, idyllic?
I don't know. I feel like we just felt beams of sun coming in through the window, just thinking about that possibility of like everything going well for this team. And given what happened, I don't know. I think there's a chance that you could say, okay, like we're good otherwise. Like, this person's not going to play that much. Who really cares if it's like 12 Manuel Rivera bats a week? And you could also say, like, well, a better time than now. I might lean towards the Coby Mayo side just because that's something you feel like you can control. But I thought it was pretty informative when Michael Elias said, like, we're really trying to like make this a time when like he can come up and stay up versus like having our hand forced by injuries. And then like I bet like Ramon Arias told the trainers, like, as he was talking, like, my hamstring hurts. Like, can you call up Coby Mayo for me? But I think that's something a little more controllable, and you feel like you have a little more. I don't want to say control again. You have a little more latitude with how it goes, and like they can't really like take like an 0 for 30 from their third baseman at this stage. They got other stuff going on.
Yeah. Let's talk about Brandon Young, 26-year-old, the former undrafted free agent, the Orioles number 20 prospect, according to Baseball America. He's made 2 starts. He's given up 3 earned runs in each of them. Pitched 4 innings his first time, pitched 4 2/3 innings in his second time. He is walking a lot, but the strikeout totals aren't bad. I think he struck out 5 in his most recent start. He's currently back down in AAA. He could be a candidate to start tomorrow night if the Orioles decide to bring him back up. I believe he would be on regular rest if they were to call him back up to start in Minnesota. John, do you feel like Brandon Young deserves more opportunities in the short term to start games for this team?
Yes, I do. I think we're talking about like the bar when the bar is on the floor at this point in some cases, but he's been fine. They've had a chance to win all the games he's pitched, all 2 of them. And I'm not sure how it'll work with like how long he's been optioned to actually start tomorrow. I'm sure somebody's can go on the IL if they need that. But I'm fascinated to find out like how his integration. I'd see Chase McDermott on the agenda. I think they're kind of in the same boat where it's the same as we're talking about with Coby Mayo. There's not an on-ramp that's under good circumstances at this point for these guys to get any kind of meaningful run. And there's not a cushion for them to not pitch well immediately, which is something we haven't really seen anyone in this rotation do when they're called up. And even the good ones, Grayson Rodriguez, Kyle Bradish, they didn't come up and light the world on fire. It took some time. So you're setting guys up not to fail. You're setting guys up to be challenged and to experience challenges in the wider context of a team that is experiencing those challenges in those places. So if we're sitting here, if we don't see Brandon Young again for like 3 months, if we don't see Chase McDermott for like 3 months, I'm not going to be surprised. I don't think anyone would be thrilled by that, especially if your names are Chase McDermott or Brandon Young or you're related to them. But I think it might just be a situation where there's going to be a higher bar once the rotation starts to get a little more healthy to say, can we really do this? And I'm not sure that they're going to be able to.
Yeah, I do think it could be a while for Chase McDermott. He's also 26 years old, Orioles number 5 prospect. Made that 1 start in the big leagues last year and then immediately got hurt. It's been a while since we've seen Chase McDermott. Did not have a spring training, just finished his rehab assignment, and pitched 4 scoreless innings in Norfolk last week, giving up just 1 hit. The fact that he had finished last season with an injury, he had no spring training, the fact that we are in May and he is now finally returning to AAA Norfolk, he's behind. He really needs to catch up. And I expect him to eventually make an impact on this team. I feel better about his ability to make an impact on this team than I do, say, Trevor Rogers, because I feel like McDermott still has the higher ceiling. McDermott, he doesn't have the big league experience, but this team feels similarly to Chase McDermott that they do to Cade Povich. However, it could be a while. When I'm thinking about the Orioles' tendency to build guys up, the Orioles' tendency to slow play their pitchers, I think it could be a while before we see Chase McDermott.
Yes, and I think it's important to know with Chase McDermott too. He went up, he came up for 1 start. I think he pitched 1 more time down in Norfolk before his injury cropped up, and he still hasn't really had the chance to, and he had the offseason and he had some time in spring to work with the coaches and stuff, but there wasn't really a dedicated amount of time the way that somebody like Cade Povich would have had last year to say, all right, this is what I learned in the big leagues. I need to do X, Y, and Z better if I'm going to pitch well up there. He hasn't had those options of like a sustained run in AAA to apply those lessons and apply those changes. And there are some, his start wasn't bad. I don't think it was great. But there are lessons in terms of like execution and pitch mix and stuff like that he was sent down to work on, and then he got hurt and didn't really get a chance to. So I think you have to consider that. I'm trying to look up as we're talking his like workload. I don't think he's somebody who you need to like monitor that. He didn't throw a ton of innings last year, but he's also among the easier candidates who are on the roster and are considered starters to say, why don't you pitch in the bullpen in August and September? Give him like the DL haul, like, yes, you're still a starter, wink, wink. And we're going to build you up as a starter next year, wink, wink. But can you come and like air it out of the bullpen for us for 2 months? Because it might look pretty good.
Yeah. And this rotation, similar to the outfield, when you look down the road at this rotation for 2026, I'm looking at a lot of potential holes in this rotation because Zach Eflin is scheduled to be a starter. Grayson Rodriguez, you expect to be in that rotation. Beyond that, there aren't. Dean Kramer, you expect to be in that rotation. Other than that, Charlie Morton, Tomoyuki Sugano, these guys are on one-year deals. It's Kyle Bradish, if he finishes out this season healthy, he could be in that rotation, but there really aren't too many guaranteed starters for 2026. So whether it's McDermott, whether it's Povich, the Orioles are hoping whether it's Brandon Young, the Orioles are hoping one of these guys shows himself this year that he can be a starter in 2026.
Yeah, that would help. I feel like you kind of left last season thinking Cade Povich was in the mix, and that was pretty good, and it still might turn out to be something that was right. He was in the mix. He was on the opening day roster, and he's pitched 6 or 7 times or whatever this year. I think you want to have that kind of backfill be a little more established, a little more known at the major league level. And as you're talking about Tomoyuki Sugano, I can't wait for our podcast in like July when we're talking about like how big the bag should be to keep him here.
Well,
I'm fired up for that already.
Back up the Brinks truck.
Yeah, let's get that man some money.
He is building up his leverage, I'll tell you, in contract negotiations between his performances and this team's inability to find other starters. Boy, he could get a bag. All right, let's shout out Maverick Handley here because
Mav,
the 2019 6th round pick has made his big league debut. He was in Mike Elias's very first draft, and he's been in this system ever since. And he has just kind of stuck around. The Orioles avoided all their chances to add him to the 40-man roster and protect him from the Rule 5 draft, and he just never got taken by another team. The fact that he is one of 3 Stanford guys, I remember that being a big story years ago, that the Orioles drafted in that first draft. It was Kyle Stowers, Andrew Dashbaugh, and Maverick Handley. And the fact that Maverick Handley is the only one remaining, couldn't have predicted that all these years later. Now, he has yet to get his first big league hit, got his first start behind the dish in replacing Gary Sanchez on the roster on Sunday. Got hit by a pitch, so his OBP is not 0. That is good. But happy for Maverick Handley to be able to make his big league debut, a guy that you have seen catch a lot of games in the minor leagues. And for those asking why it's Maverick Handley, not Samuel Basallo, Basallo just has not nearly the level of AAA at-bats that Maverick Handley does. Samuel Basallo is still just 20 years old. He's missed a lot of time this season, played only 15 games. He missed time with a hamstring strain, and he's hitting 208 with a 720 OPS. So he's only played 36 AAA games between last year and this year. Maverick Handley is the much more experienced option. The Orioles eventually will call up Samuel Basallo, but for now it's Maverick Handley, and we're happy for the guy.
Yeah. I mean, we got to see Austin Wynns hit 1 million home runs when the Reds were here hitting 1 million home runs. He also debuted when he was 27, same profile. You are either one of those guys or you're not, who can just like, once you get to the big leagues, you could just be a big league backup catcher for a while if you can do the things that you need to do well. Austin Wynns has been doing this for a while now. He's 34, having a really good offensive stretch, and I'm not saying that there's going to be a month where like Maverick Handley has like a 1141 OPS when he's 34, but I'm happy that he gets a chance to do this now.
Yeah. Let's do a quick prospect check-in for some of the guys on the farm right now who we could be seeing eventually. When you talk about guys with high ceilings, Enrique Bradfield Jr., the Orioles' former first-round pick, is still injured. He's still in Double-A Chesapeake, not Double-A Bowie, Double-A Chesapeake. He's the Orioles' number 6 prospect, according to Baseball America. He's got that hamstring strain. A few weeks ago, Mike Elias said that he believes Bradfield can come back by mid-May. So that is certainly slowing down his progress. A couple other outfielders, Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian. Both these guys are in AAA. Both these guys drafted highly by the Orioles in former drafts. Beavers 23 years old, Fabian 24. Beavers number 7 prospect, Fabian number 9 prospect. Dylan Beavers is hitting close to 300. He's hitting 296. He's got 3 homers. He's got an 827 OPS in 30 AAA games. Judd Fabian not doing as well. 194 batting average. He's hitting a lot of homers, 8 homers. But he is striking out a whole lot. We knew this was part of his profile since he got taken out of Florida. He's got a whopping 29 strikeouts in 30 games.
I would also say that that's a 23.4% strikeout rate, which is 10% lower than what he did last year total.
Right.
He had a 40.8% strikeout rate, which was too high. But the Orioles kind of target like 25-ish in the minors because you're not going to get better as you get to the big league. It's probably going to go up a little bit. So if you can be under 25 in the minors, you can have that natural like cushion to say, all right, yeah, if you get to the big leagues, you're going to strike out like a little more. And if you're in like that 23, 24, 25 range, there was one year I was doing some calls and people keep being like, oh, it was under this. It was under this. And why do you do that? Why are you saying that? And that was an informative thing. So like, I'll give him a little credit. Also like a 773 OPS, which is not terrible. And that's Judd Fabian defense corner.
Yeah.
Sorry.
No, I'm also wondering, I'm looking at these guys and they've flown under the radar because there have always been better prospects ahead of them. You know, right now it's Enrique Bradfield Jr. Vance Honeycutt just got drafted. He's going to be more highly touted for the foreseeable future than Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian. Are Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian, in your mind, John, destined to be this latest version of Robert Newstrom and Hudson Haskin, these guys that never make their big league debuts? They consistently put up pretty good numbers in the minors, but just the Orioles don't have room for them. They're just not quite good enough to break through. They're not quite good enough to be trade pieces. Or could Dylan Beavers and Judd Fabian maybe work their way into a big league outfield in 2020? Maybe if somebody goes down 2025, but especially 2026.
I think there are roles for them. I don't know if those roles materialize here, but like you can say, I mean, how long was Ryan McKenna here doing Ryan McKenna things?
A long time.
A really long time.
He was also a high school draft pick, so he was a little bit younger.
But in the majors, he was basically there from like the moment he could be to like the moment they ran out of options where they had to start paying him.
Yeah. And he played a lot. I mean, he played 85 games, I think, one season.
Yes. Like Judd Fabian can absolutely do that 100%. And he would do that for the league minimum for 3 years and then not that much more for however long he was here. And that is valuable because you don't have to go out and do that. If you have $5 million for Ramon Laureano on the books right now, and you have Judd Fabian doing that type of job for $750,000, $800,000, like that is preferable if you can do it well. I don't think you can strike out a million times if you are going to be asked to do that. But if you strike out a little bit and you have some pop and you play really good defense across all 3 center field or all outfield spots, you can do that job. And I think that is a job for them. Dylan Beavers, I think it all hinges on how much power he ends up hitting because it's an interesting profile. I don't think you're going to, you don't really have like light hitting, like corner outfielders,
who hit from the left side.
Like there's big hairy dudes who take those spots for a reason. But I think I'm not somebody who's given up on him as like developing some power. I think there's been some stuff happening this year to make that happen, and he's been much better since a slow start. So I think there are roles for them, but I think they are not going to. I mean, we can sit here right now and guarantee they're not going to get like the Gunnar Henderson like runway to the big leagues where like, congratulations, you are playing every day now. Like that is not going to happen for these guys, and that's, you know, there's nothing wrong with that. That's just the role that they're going to be in.
Right, and given the number of injuries that this team has already incurred, it's not out of the realm of possibility that one of these guys gets an opportunity this season.
Sooner than later, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we will see if the Orioles can remain healthy and if they can win a few games on their road trip as they head to Minnesota and then to LA. I will probably not be staying up for their games against the Angels on Friday and Saturday night, because I think their first pitches is 9:35 Eastern time, 9:38 Eastern time. Don't know if I have that in me anymore, John. Just like you don't have in you getting hit by a line drive like Dean Kramer, I don't have the dog in me to stay up late to watch an Orioles West Coast game.
The Angels game specifically, I remember from 2021 when we were doing, writing like game stories off the broadcast and doing Zooms. There was an Angels game that
wasn't the Dr. Poo Poo game. No.
That was 2019. That was right. There was a member of the media on the Zoom, which is we're talking probably like 1:00, who was not awake. Who was not awake.
Signed into the Zoom though.
Signed into the Zoom.
And then fell asleep.
Yeah, like what transformed from the person that they were, and I won't name them, to Snoozing B. Anthony, just sleeping away on the Zoom, waiting for Hyder to come on. And I'm sure it wasn't a good game, and I'm sure it wasn't a valuable post-game Zoom. But you got to stay awake for it. There was a lot. It was pretty loosey goosey on the Zooms by that point.
Yeah,
we'd been doing it for a while. There was a lot of like waiting for people to log on, people like with the team, and a lot of just like people sitting there staring off into space and like clearly not paying attention. But only one instance of someone sleeping.
That's really something.
Yeah,
I am going to turn this podcast off and then ask you who that is, and you'll tell me. Thanks so much for tuning in to the Banner Baseball Show. Please like, rate, review, subscribe, write us a 5-star review, and I will read it out here on the show. Please subscribe to John's newsletter. Please subscribe to the Baltimore Banner, the Pulitzer Prize winning Baltimore Banner.
Yeah,
we're all taking a victory lap for that.
Yeah, I was like, that's awesome. Pulitzer Prize?
When is Inside the Dugout going to win a Pulitzer Prize?
I don't know. We'll start by throwing like a rockin' birthday party. I think this is number 48, and I think 52 would mean 1 year. So We're close.
Yeah, I mean there has to be a category for baseball newsletters.
Yeah, I think we had to delay it until like the end of May last year because it's just around this time of year last year. I went to Paris to see Taylor Swift.
That's
and I was
right.
like, we cannot start this until after that. It's too important. I have to get this thing out of my life.
Yeah, that is massively important.